Hello, everyone. In this training session, we will cover financial report setup. We will learn how to create and configure financial statements, such as profit and loss statement and balance sheet. We will do this by defining report structures, linking reporting groups, and applying formatting to generate meaningful reports. To start, let's go over the agenda of this session. We will cover key topics like understanding financial reporting in the Onfinity system. We will also cover how to create reporting structures, link reporting groups, and so on. The objective of this training is to understand financial reports and how they are configured. The prerequisites for setting up financial reports are that the chart of accounts must already be configured in the system, and the reporting groups and subgroups must also be defined. Financial reporting is the process of organizing accounting data and reporting on the current financial status of the company. It typically involves issuing financial statements, which include the income statement, also known as the statement of profit and loss, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. In Onfinity, financial report configuration is performed on the financial report form screen. As a use case, to view the company's financial statements in Onfinity, a user can configure these statements on the financial report form screen. The financial report form in Onfinity is specifically used to create and configure financial reports within the system. Using this screen, users can design new reports or customize existing ones according to requirements. When creating a new report, you need to define reporting lines and reporting columns, which determine the structure and details of the report. The reporting lines are directly or indirectly linked to the ledger accounts, ensuring that the report reflects accurate data. Indirect linking means linkage through reporting groups rather than directly to ledger accounts. For example, to set up a profit and loss statement in the Onfinity system, we define rows and columns. Rows represent the particulars. For instance, under the revenue section, we have sales and other income, followed by total revenues. Then we list expenses such as cost of goods sold, operating expenses, administration, depreciation, and finance cost. After calculating total expenses, we arrive at net profit before tax, then subtract taxes. Columns represent the reporting periods. For example, there can be a current year column and a previous year column. If we generate a report for the financial year 2024, the previous year column would display data for 2023. We can also calculate variance to compare revenues or expenses between the 2 years. Similarly, for a balance sheet, we define accounts such as assets, which include current assets and non-current assets. On the column side, we display the current year closing balance and the previous year closing balance. Under equity and liabilities, we list total equity, current liabilities, and finally, the total equity and liabilities for both the current and previous years. Let's now move to the system to see how to configure a report in Onfinity. Log into the system using your username and password. Search for Financial Report Form using the search utility, or navigate to Financial Management, Financial Reporting, Financial Report Form. This financial report form initially appears as a blank canvas with no reports configured. Once reports are created, they will be listed on the left side of the screen, and selecting a report will show its details on the right side. Let's start by creating a statement of profit and loss. Enter a report name and an optional description, for example. This report shows the profit and loss during the financial period. Next is the balance aggregation setup. Balance aggregation determines how balances are grouped or accumulated. First, select the accounting book if multiple books exist. Provide a title and description for this aggregation. Choose a calendar if you want to specify the financial period. Select the balance accumulation option. Daily generates one entry per ledger account per day, grouped by active dimensions. Calendar month generates a single monthly entry for each ledger account. Period of a VA calendar accumulates by specific accounting periods. Calendar week accumulates balances weekly. You can also specify a date from to start accumulating balances from a specific date. For example, January 1st, 2023. Entries before this date will not be included. There is an option to set this aggregation as the default method. You can also enable accumulation based on various accounting dimensions, such as product, business partner, project, or campaign. Turning these on allows reporting or filtering by those dimensions. For example, if revenue is posted on the 25th of September, 2024 for two different products, and daily accumulation is enabled with product as a dimension, the system will generate two separate daily entries, one for each product. Once configured, save the aggregation and select it in the financial report. In the same way, the business partner, project, budget, and campaign, along with all other accounting dimensions that we are currently using or have enabled in our accounting book, can also be activated here for the accumulation of balances. However, these are not mandatory. The purpose of keeping them active is to allow you to generate reports based on these accounting dimensions. This means you can apply filters for a particular business partner, a specific project, or a particular campaign. Once you turn them on, save the record. You will then have the accumulation of balances, which can be selected in the financial report. After selecting the accumulation balance, there is an option to choose the type not include. We will explain this option a little later to understand why, when, and for what purpose this type not include is used. Next, there is an option called Not Use Accounting Schema Precision. This means that if we have an accounting book, for example, in US dollars, where the standard precision for that currency is defined as 2 decimal places, but for this particular report we want a different precision, we can define it here. For instance, we might want to run the report with 3 decimal places or with only 1. We can specify a custom precision, or simply turn this option off if we prefer to use the default accounting schema precision. Then we have the option Print Name or Description after Column Index. I will explain the purpose of this once we start configuring the report, along with other related options. Let's save this report now. On the left side, you can see that the report has been saved with its name and description. Moving to the report line set. As explained earlier, configuring a financial report requires two main components, report lines and report columns. If I quickly refer back to the presentation, you can see that the items we define, such as revenue, sales, other income, and total revenue, represent the report rows or report lines. On the other hand, what we see as current year, previous year, or variance on the top represents the report columns. Let's return to the system. Here, we can either select a report line set from an existing report or create a new one. For example, let's create a new report line set for the statement of profit and loss. We will give it a name, save it, and now a set of report lines is ready to be defined. Next, we need to define each row of the profit and loss statement separately. Let's go back to the presentation for reference. The first row is revenue, and under revenue, we have sales and other income. Let's start with revenue. For revenue, we don't want to display any figures. It will simply be a header row, left blank for formatting purposes. So, we create a row with the name revenue, assign a header label and a print label, these can be the same or different, and give it a sequence number. The sequence number determines the order in which rows appear in the report. Next, we choose the line type. There are two options. Calculation, which is used when we want to perform calculations across multiple rows, such as adding or subtracting balances. Segment value, which is used when we want the system to directly fetch values, or when we want to leave the row blank. Since revenue will remain blank, we select segment value and save it. On the left side, you can now see a new line created with the name revenue. Now, let's add another report line called sales. We assign a print label, set the sequence number, and select segment value. When segment value is selected, A new field appears called posting type. The posting type allows us to filter the row based on posting categories. For example, we can create a row for sales budget and another for sales actual. In this case, we select budget for the first row, and later we will create another row for sales actual. Next is the type column, which lists all the accounting dimensions enabled in the accounting book. We can apply filters for specific dimensions or leave them blank if no filter is required. The option link allows us to connect the row either with a ledger code or a ledger group. If we select ledger code, the system displays a section at the bottom where we can choose the specific ledger accounts to link, for example, trade revenue or service revenue. We can select multiple accounts and click OK, and the system will create multiple records accordingly. Alternatively, we can link with a ledger group. From the financial reporting group, we select the group name, say Management Profit and Loss, and then choose the appropriate subgroup. For example, under Management Profit and Loss, we can select the subgroup Revenue or Sales. When we click the eye icon, we can view the accounts or account groups linked to that subgroup. For instance, we might see that account code 41 represents sales. To view the detailed ledger accounts under code 41, we can open the chart of accounts or the financial group form to see the hierarchy. There is also an option to include nullable dimensions, which determines whether rows should consider null values for the selected dimension filters. Another feature is conditional formatting ignore, which is useful when applying conditional formatting rules to a specific row. We also have horizontal line and line break options for report formatting, which we will cover later in the formatting section. Next are row formatting and column posting type options, which are also part of conditional formatting and the overall look and feel of the report. We will revisit these when we focus on formatting. Let's now save the sales row. Similarly, let's add another report line called Other Income. We select segment value, link it to a ledger group, choose Other Income, and save it. Now, suppose we want to calculate total revenue by adding the values of row 20 Sales and row 30 Other Income. We create a new report line called Total Revenue and select Line Type Calculation. When we choose Calculation, a separate grid appears to define the formula. Click the plus icon to start. First, select an open bracket to begin the formula. Next, select Type Row and choose the row Sales. Then select the operator add, subtract, multiply, divide, or percentage. Here we select add and click OK. One formula row is now created. Next, we add Other Income. Again, select type as row, choose Other Income, and then close the bracket. For the last row, no operator is required after the closing bracket. Adding 1 would cause an error. There are other formula options as well, such as using a fixed value, for example, to divide a figure by a constant, referencing a ledger code, or even linking a reporting group. If we want to use a reporting group in a formula, we simply select the group name from the list. Once the formula is defined, click Save to finalize the row. Now we have 4 rows defined in our report: Revenue, Sales, Other Income, and Total Revenue. Next, let's configure the report column set. This is where we define multiple columns grouped under a single set name. We can use an existing report column set or create a new one. For example, let's create a set called Statement of Profit and Loss. After saving it, we can use this column set across different reports. Now, let's define the first column as current year. We assign a header label, a sequence number, and a print label. Under the period option, we can decide how the period name appears in the report. For example, if the parameter selected is 2024, we can choose whether the report should display the label current year or the actual year 2024, or even display both. The posting type is mandatory here. This defines whether the column will show actuals, budgets, or commitments. For our statement of profit and loss, we'll select actual. Next is the type filter, which again allows filtering based on dimensions. For example, we can filter by organization unit to generate a profit and loss statement for a specific department, such as the sales department. In this case, we select the sales department, and the system will generate the P and L for that department only. If we leave this unselected, the report will include data for all dimensions and cost centers. Next, we have an option for column type, which can be set as year, period, or calculation. This means we can also perform calculations at the column level. For example, if we want to calculate the variance between the current year and the previous year in our report format, we can achieve this by using the calculation column type. If I choose to filter the column type as year or period, I then need to define the amount type, whether it will display the debit amount, credit amount, or the balance. The balance represents debit minus credit or credit minus debit, depending on the ledger account type. For asset and expense accounts, the balance is always debit minus credit. For revenue, liabilities, and owner's equity or share capital accounts, the balance is credit minus debit. There is also an option to exclude a particular dimension type, not include. This allows you to exclude a specific accounting dimension from the column. Next, we can define a precision for a specific column set. For example, for a variance column, we might not need to display decimals. In that case, we can set the precision to 0. However, for actual data such as the current year, we may want to display figures according to the currency precision. If left blank, the system will use the reporting currency precision defined in the report header. If the column type is set as year or period, the system will ask for the specific period or year to be used. Under the period section, we can define whether it represents a month, a year period group, or a year range. When selecting month, the system will ask whether it is the current month, next month, or previous month. For example, if you select a specific month in the report parameter while generating the financial report, you can specify whether this column should show data for the current month, the next month, or the previous month. Similarly, if you select year, you need to define whether the column will display data for the current year, the next year, or the previous year. Selecting total will display the total of all the defined years or periods. This allows you to group months together, such as defining a quarter or half-year period. For example, if you want to generate a report with columns for Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, you can define these as period groups. These groups can be pre-configured in the system as quarters or half-yearly periods. You can either select a fixed quarter like Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4, or allow the report parameter to determine whether to display the current quarter and compare it with the previous quarter. This option allows you to select a range of years, for example, from one year to another. Let's say you want data from the previous year to the current year. If you select previous 1 year with the parameter set to 2024, the system will automatically consider 2024-23 as the previous year. If you select 2, the system will go back 2 years, meaning 2022. For example, if you choose a range from previous 1 year to current year, the report will display data from 2023 to 2024. Once the required period or year is defined, you can save the column. For instance, you can create a current year column and save it. Similarly, you can define a previous year column by selecting the column type as year or period, and setting the period as previous year, for example, previous 1 year. You can also create another column, such as previous 2 years, to display balances for 2022 if the current year is 2024. If we need to calculate a variance, we create a new column, give it a name, select column type calculation, and then define the formula. Here we only deal with column level formulas. For example, select current year as the first value. choose the operator minus. Select previous year as the second value. Close the bracket. This simple formula, current year minus previous year, will calculate the variance. Once done, save the column. Next, we have the option to define report parameters. These parameters control what must be selected whenever the report is generated. For example, we can make it mandatory to select accounting schema, calendar, year. We can also specify whether selecting an organization is required. Any of these values can be marked as mandatory, depending on the report's requirements. We can also rearrange the sequence of parameters. For instance, if we want the organization parameter to appear second in the sequence, we can change its sequence number to 15 so it appears after accounting schema or before calendar. All the different accounting dimension filters can also be applied in the report. One important option is update balance. This checkbox ensures that the system updates and accumulates balances before generating the report. Enabling this option means the system will first update all balances considering all recent transactions that have been posted, but may not yet be included in the accumulation before presenting the data. After selecting all required parameters and options, click Save Changes to store them. Finally, we have the option to generate the report. Once all parameters are set, simply click on Generate icon to produce the financial report. When you click on the Generate icon, the system will display the parameters that we have selected. We can choose these parameters to generate the report. Here, we have parameters such as accounting schema, organization, and calendar. At present, these are non-mandatory, but we can also make them mandatory if required. To do this, go back to the financial report screen, where there is a checkbox to mark them as mandatory. Once selected, we can save and generate the report. Let's start by selecting the accounting book and the organization. For the organization, I can select one or multiple organizations using the organization filter. The system allows creating multiple organization hierarchies. If such hierarchies exist in the Onfinity system, I can select any node within those hierarchies to consolidate financial data at the desired level. For this example, we will select a specific organization and then choose the calendar. In the calendar filter, all available calendars will appear. These calendars are either directly linked to the organizations or to the tenant. After selecting the calendar, we can also select the year, since we are generating a statement of profit and loss for a particular financial year. Next is the Update Balance checkbox. As mentioned earlier, this option is used to accumulate the most recent postings. When enabled, the system updates and consolidates all balances before generating the report. After making these selections, click Generate. The report is now generated, showing headers such as revenue and sales. For example, under sales, we have an item of $25,000 as other income, with a total revenue of $75,000. Now let's talk about the details of the report. For example, if I want to see all the different ledger accounts or accounting subgroups covered under sales or other income, I can go back to the financial report form, go to the report header, and there I have options for list sources as well as list subgroups. When I select list sources and list subgroups and save, the system will list all the ledger accounts and the subgroups covered under that heading or report line. When I click to expand, I will see revenue as a subgroup, and under revenue, I will see the particular ledger account where the account is posted. If I want to see the source of these entries or balances, I can click on the source icon. When I click, a new screen will pop up showing all the entries that are covered under this particular ledger account. I can click directly to zoom into that particular transaction and see where the entry is coming from. If it is a GL entry, it will navigate to the GL screen. If it is an invoice, it will navigate to the invoice screen and show the actual transaction information. For example, this shows the document number from where that particular amount was posted. You can also click Expand All to expand all the rows and generate the report in CSV or PDF format. You can export it to PDF and also select a custom page size for the PDF export. Now let's talk about a few additional data filter scenarios that we are going to cover in this session. First one is excluding period closing entries. The first scenario is period closing entries, excluded from the report. If I go back to the system and want to exclude period closing entries, for example, if I have closed my financial period 2024, closing a financial period means a profit and loss closing entry is posted. A particular closing entry is posted where all the expenses and revenue amounts are posted in the opposite direction to calculate the profit before tax or profit after tax balances. These profit and loss closing entries are posted with an additional accounting dimension. In a different training session, you will learn how to create these profit and loss closing entries along with the additional accounting dimension. These entries can be excluded from the report. For example, if I run the statement of profit and loss for the previous year and some of the entries are not appearing, suppose the balances appear as 0, because the expenses and revenues were reversed or closed to get the net profit for that particular period to exclude only the closing entries, we can select a particular dimension wherever it is linked, such as a user element 1 or user element 2. By selecting that particular accounting dimension, we can exclude those entries and then generate the report. The next scenario is a report line with a filter for a specific dimension. For example, if I go to the report line where I have sales, this sales section is linked to a particular reporting group, such as revenue, where all the sales accounts are linked. Now, suppose you want to see only sales for a particular product. Let's say product A. You can give it a label name, select the type as product, and then select a particular product reference. For example, I have a specific product that is sold. I can select this product as a reference and generate the report. This means that this line will only show the sale of that particular item. Similarly, if I want to filter business partner-wise sales, for example, if I want to see all the sales for customer A, I can select type as business partner, and then select the reference of that particular customer for which I want to generate the report. The next scenario is data with other posting types such as budget, statistical, commitment, etc. There are two options for selecting the posting type as a budget, statistical or commitment. One is for a particular report line where we can select the posting type. For example, for the sales line, if I want only a budget or a statistical figure in my reporting, I will select the posting type as statistical and generate the report. Similarly, I have an option on the column side, but that option is mandatory. I must always select a posting type on the column side. Here, there is only a single choice you can select, either actual, budget, commitment, or reservation, but not multiple types at the same time. Save the report and generate it, and it will filter only those posting types that we have selected. The next scenario is a column filter with a specific dimension. As we understand about the report line accounting dimension, where I select a type and apply a filter on the report column set, similarly, I can select a particular type or dimension. I then select the organization unit for which I want to show the data in that particular column. The same logic applies if I want a project filter. For project reporting in the column, I can select Project A, Project B, or Project C for the P&L and filter accordingly. The next scenario is balance accumulation for various period ranges, such as beginning of year till date, from current period till year end, accumulating previous balances. These options allow us to accumulate balances for various date ranges. For example, if the column type is set as year and the period as month, 3 options are enabled. Accumulate from start year date to defined period end. If I select this and choose September 2025 in the parameters, this column will represent year-to-date data accumulating balances from the beginning of the financial year up to the defined period. Accumulate from defined period to year end. If I select September 2025, it will show data from September through December. This is useful when comparing actual versus budget, or when forecasting future months, as budgets can be posted for future months while actuals may not yet exist. Accumulate beginning balances to the defined period. This accumulates all historical balances up to the defined period. For example, when generating a balance sheet and needing opening balances, this option will provide opening balances for that particular ledger account up to the defined period. Let us now move to the various formatting scenarios. Onfinity provides several possibilities for formatting the report. The first example is conditional formatting, which can be applied at the column level. Suppose I want to apply conditional formatting to a specific column. Conditional formatting allows you to define rules. For example, if this particular column contains any value less than 0, that is, a negative value, I can apply a specific formatting to highlight it. To apply formatting, I can use an existing format or click on the 3 dots to create a new formatting rule. For example, I can set a rule that if a value is negative, it should be highlighted in red. I can select the font color, choose the font weight such as bold, italic, or underline, change the background color, or even adjust the text alignment for that conditional formatting. Once I select my options, I simply save the rule, and the conditional formatting will be ready. There is also another type of conditional formatting. Instead of changing the font color or style, I can set a fixed value. For example, if any value is negative, I can instruct the system to display 0 in the report. This means that in the generated report, the value will appear as 0 instead of showing a negative figure. This setting can also be saved as a conditional formatting rule. The same conditional formatting can be applied to multiple columns. For each column, I can define and apply separate conditional formatting rules as needed. The next formatting option is row formatting, which allows you to set different fonts, weights, and colors for entire rows. For example, suppose I have rows such as revenue, sales, other income, or total revenue. If I want to apply a particular style to one of these headers, I will go back to the report line set, select the desired line, and apply the formatting. Here, I have several options. For instance, I can select the font color, for example, black, choose a font weight such as bold or italic, and even select a background color. Let's say I choose a specific color and save the changes. When I regenerate the report, this particular line will appear with the selected color and style. You can also apply formatting to all report lines at once. To do this, go to the report header, click on row formatting, and either select an existing format or create a new one. You can define the font color, font weight, background color, and other style settings here. This formatting will then apply to the entire report. However, formatting rules have a priority. If a line has formatting defined at the line level, it will override the header level formatting. If no formatting is defined at the line level, the system will apply the formatting defined at the header level. There are also other formatting options such as subgroup line formatting. This refers to subgroups under a main header. For example, under sales, there might be a subgroup called revenue. I can apply a different formatting style specifically for this subgroup. Source line formatting. When I click on the icon to view the source accounts, I can apply different formatting to the source account lines. Transaction line formatting. This option allows me to set formatting for individual transaction lines. Dimension group formatting. If I have applied a dimension group, I can format the dimension line separately as well. These options provide flexibility to format rows at various levels of detail. The next case is row underlining. If I want to underline a particular row, for example, the total revenue line, I can go to the horizontal line column and select from the available options. The options include after line break, before line break, Before and after line, double underline. For instance, I can select double underline or choose to add lines before and after the row. Once I save and regenerate the report, a horizontal line will appear according to the selected option. This is useful for emphasizing totals or key figures. Another option is to suppress lines having zero value. This means that if certain report lines show 0 for all columns in the selected period, those lines can be excluded from the generated report. To enable this, there is an option in the report header called Suppress Line 0 Value. This option can be applied before conditional formatting. If any ledger account has a 0 value before any formatting is applied, the line will be suppressed and will not appear in the report. After conditional formatting, if conditional formatting changes a value to 0 based on a rule, I can still suppress those lines so that they do not appear in the report. This keeps the report clean and free of unnecessary zero-value rows. There is also an option to ignore conditional formatting for a specific column or line. For example, suppose I have defined conditional formatting for the report column set, but for sales, I want to display the actual posted values exactly as they are without applying any conditional formatting or setting a fixed value. In that case, I can choose to ignore conditional formatting for the sales line. I simply select the reference columns and mark them to ignore the conditional formatting. I can also select multiple columns to ignore the formatting for those columns. In addition to formatting, you can configure various types of financial reports. For example, after configuring a statement of profit and loss, you can similarly configure a balance sheet. Create a new report and provide a name and description, then save the changes. Go to the report line set. Instead of using the existing report line set, select or create a new one, for example, a balance sheet line set. Add a line such as assets as a header. Set the line type as segment value and save it. You can apply formatting to this header if desired. Add another report line such as current assets and link it with the appropriate ledger groups. Select the reporting groups or subgroups to include in the report. For example, under current assets, you can select all related subgroups at once and save them. Define your report parameters such as the current year and current month, save them, and then generate the report. This process is similar to the configuration steps for a profit and loss report. It is important to note that there are two different screens. Financial report form. This is used to configure reports. Users can modify report lines, columns, parameters, and formatting. Financial report viewer. This is used only to view reports. Users with access to the viewer can generate and view reports but cannot modify them. This concludes this training session on formatting scenarios and financial report configuration in Onfinity. We have covered how to apply conditional formatting, various row and column formatting options, underlining and suppressing zero-value lines, ignoring conditional formatting for specific columns, configuring reports such as the balance sheet. For more details on related topics, such as financial reporting groups, please refer to the separate training session provided. Thank you for attending.